with me for a moment while I soak this in. It's been an incredible journey, and I can't believe it's coming to an end very soon here. Xin chào các bạn, tôi tên là Huynh Đáng, tôi hiện là chủ tịch của Liên hội sinh viên Việt Nam Bắc Mỹ. Thay mặt cho Liên hội sinh viên, tôi cảm ơn các bạn đã đến tham dự Đại hội sinh viên kỳ 9 tại thành phố Minneapolis, tiểu bang Minnesota. Với chủ đề bước qua Liên hội sinh viên, hy vọng rằng các bạn trẻ, các anh chị em sẽ có cơ hội gặp gỡ, trao đổi và học hỏi với nhau. Qua kỳ đại hội này, chúng tôi mong rằng các bạn trẻ Việt Nam đến với Đại hội sinh viên sẽ có thêm kiến thức để cùng nhau viết lên một trang mới của cộng đồng người Việt hải ngoại. Thay mặt cho ban chấp hành của Liên hội sinh viên, đáng muốn cảm ơn Tổng hội sinh viên Việt Nam Midwest, Hội sinh viên Việt Nam tại thành phố Minneapolis và cộng đồng Việt Nam Minnesota, và các bạn thiện nguyện viên đã giúp tạo nên kỳ đại hội năm nay. Xin cảm ơn. As a young boy, I experienced something that really profoundly changed the way that I think and act within the Vietnamese community. It was fall. It was a fall morning in 1993, and I was in the 3rd grade, and apparently some of you were just being introduced to the world at this time. The day started like any other. I woke up and got ready for school. My mother was in the kitchen making me some eggs and toast with some siyao drizzled on top, just the way that I liked it. Later this afternoon, she was actually scheduled to fly down to Houston to look for housing for her and I. We had spent the summer in Houston while she was getting her cosmetology license, and we decided that moving to Houston would be a better opportunity for our family. I lived within walking distance of school, so every morning my mom would walk me down from our 3rd floor apartment and made sure that I crossed the street okay. And each time, as I crossed the street, I'd always turn around and give her a big wave, and then I'd turn towards school and run as fast as I could. I was always looking to show her how fast I was or how cool I was. I was always looking to impress her. Except for this particular morning, because as soon as my mom and I stepped outside, I guess I wanted to show her how much faster I was today than the rest of the days, because I just took off. And I took off and ran really fast between 2 parked cars, headed to the other side of the street. But I never made it to the other side of the street. Before I got halfway, I was met by a Ford Taurus. And that Ford Taurus hit me and broke my femur, sent my 3rd grade body flying into the air, only to have it come crashing back down into the windshield. I rolled off the hood of the car and smacked right into the pavement. Everything after this point is a bit hazy, but I do remember coming out of consciousness. I remember opening my eyes for the first time and feeling my mom's arms cradled around my limp body. I remember the tears storming down her face. I remember saying repeatedly, "Matt, đừng có bỏ con, Matt, đừng có bỏ con. Don't leave me." The horror in telling that story isn't the fact that I got hit by a car. I don't remember any physical pain. The horror is imagining what it's like to be a mother and to witness something that traumatic happen to your child. I spent the next 2 months in a cast from my neck all the way down to my toes. Needless to say, our plans to move to Houston were postponed indefinitely. My mother had to take off work to stay home and take care of me and make sure that I recovered. For me, this period of time so vividly demonstrates the sacrifice my mother has made to ensure my livelihood. But it's clearly not the only sacrifice that she's made. My mother and father, like many of your parents, made the ultimate sacrifice. They left behind family, community, and country, everything that they had ever known to pursue a better life, one that was never guaranteed. It actually wasn't until college that I realized and started to appreciate the sacrifice. I was given a short essay assignment in college, and it called for me to write about the experiences that had shaped my life up until that point in time. I wrote about my mom and her story because I realized that without her story, there would be no story. I wrote about her living through the war, coming to America, leaving behind her parents and 10 brothers and sisters. I wrote about her divorce with my dad and how for my entire life she's had the burden of playing the roles of both parents, and how she's always had to reconcile her Vietnamese traditional values with my American values that I try to bring home and impose on our family. I wrote about how on some nights I'd wake up to her sobbing in the living room because of the guilt that she felt, having been afforded the opportunity to be here while her family was still back in Vietnam, living in near poverty. I wrote about how growing up I was inconvenienced by being Vietnamese, how anytime my mom would take me to the grocery store, she would talk to me in Vietnamese and I'd be so embarrassed. I'd try to either end the conversation or reply back in English, even though I knew she couldn't understand me. I wrote about how much I admired her dedication and her sacrifice. I described her as the person most responsible for shaping my worldview, the person I most considered a hero. My mother's heroism has long fueled my dedication to this community. Her journey serves as a constant reminder of how and why I'm afforded the opportunities that I have been, and why I'm even standing before you today. The desire to carry forth her legacy and the legacy of our community has never been stronger. UNAVSA fully embodies this desire and has long understood that developing leaders is necessary for the advancement of our community. However, I believe that despite our successes in building leaders, we need to expand this strategy. In order for us to realize substantial progress, I believe the Vietnamese community, particularly the Vietnamese youth community, doesn't need just more leaders. It needs heroes. As a community, we need to break down the constraints of heroism. The youth in this community need to believe that heroism isn't just reserved for the community's elite, but rather each one of us have the capacity to perform heroic acts and be heroes ourselves right now, this moment. I think the definition of heroism in society is grossly misguided. When our society thinks of heroes, we think of two things. The superheroes, the Batmans, the Avengers, the Spider-Mans, all characters with incredible superpowers who are appointed or anointed to save their worlds. Or we think of very transformative leaders like the Martin Luther Kings, the Winston Churchills, the Abraham Lincolns. It's not hard to see why a person, especially a young person, might not qualify themselves as having the ability to serve in this capacity. I'd like to offer a few of my observations about heroism and help kind of reshape this a bit. There are three things that I believe qualify someone to be a hero. Just three. First, a hero acts to serve others in need. Second, a hero is engaged in that service voluntarily. And third, a hero understands upfront that there's some sort of risk involved in providing that service. That's it. No spider sense, no Batmobile, no superhuman strength needed. Philip Zimbardo, a world-renowned psychologist and a thought leader on heroism, says this, and I think this is what's most compelling about the idea of heroism applied to our community. He says, the key principle of heroism is heroes are most effective not alone, but in a network. It's through forming a network that people have the resources to bring their heroic impulses to life. I think that so beautifully captures what it is that we're trying to accomplish here in the UNAVSA community. VSAs and UVSAs across the continent are building this incredible network of people. They're forging new relationships each and every day. They're using and leveraging technology to become closer to one another. This network of Vietnamese youth that's being built is a resource just waiting to be used by our community's heroes. What is also true about heroes is that they all live their own lives just like anyone else does, but the difference is they're ready to take action when others are in need. The Vietnamese community needs you today more than it ever has. The choices you make, the people you impact and influence, the actions you take on our behalf will shape its entire future. You are all at the UNAVSA conference because you believe our community has not reached its fullest potential. You're here because you want to make a profound difference. One of the tools we need to equip ourselves with is the mastery of the Vietnamese language. I was on the phone with my mom the other day. We always check in every now and then. And she gave me a call. I picked up, and she said something. I couldn't really quite make it out. It was really muffled. So I told her, Mom, call me back on the home phone. So she calls back, and she tells me that she was in the garden and that she had gotten a lot of water on the phone. I had learned somewhere that a really effective way to save your phone in this situation is to turn it off and take out the battery and put it in a thing of rice and let it sit there for a couple of days. And I guess the grains are supposed to soak up all the water. So I tell her, Matt, con sẽ giúp mẹ. Tắt cái điện thoại, lấy cái pin ra, rồi để vô cái tô cơm. Làm liền, không thôi điện thoại nó hư á. A few minutes later, I get a call. She's on the other line. She's complaining how messy the process was. Có đẻ. Rất hay, right? And we start going back and forth. How is it dirty? I don't understand. It's just rice. Just put it in. So there's this awkward moment that I'm not sure if I'm supposed to speak or she's supposed to speak. And she yelps, trời tô gạo hả mày? It turns out there's two different words for rice, the pre-cooked and post-cooked rice. So yes, I accidentally told my mother to put her water-damaged phone in cooked rice, and she did. So if you offer this advice in Vietnamese, it's tô gạo, phải tô cơm. That was one of the more enlightened exchanges surrounding language that Mom and I have had. But over the years, I've been increasingly frustrated with becoming more and more articulate in English, but having that not translate to Vietnamese. My mom and I have a pretty sound relationship, I'd like to think, and I often wonder how much stronger it could be if I could actually provide insight or context about my life. You know, why I'm a part of UNAVSA, what I'm doing in school. I could seek advice on how to talk to that cutie I saw at the Sung Nhai, the disco. Or even what my passions, goals, or dreams are. We all understand how powerful language is. It's often described as the gateway to culture. I believe it's also the leading reason as to why there's such an incredible generational gap in our community. How are we supposed to work together if we can't communicate with one another? 93% of Vietnamese American families speak Vietnamese as their primary language at home. Over the next 100 years, this is undoubtedly going to change. But to what extent is up to you. Certainly, most of the households will be speaking English primarily, but how many of them will be speaking Vietnamese well? 50%, 40%, 10%, 0%? What are you okay with? You're in control of that statistic. As I was forming my thoughts for today's talk, I planned on highlighting several issues within our community to talk about, and I wanted to kind of set the context for where our community is today in order to help you discover what the potential for our community is. But you'll have an opportunity to do that this weekend. I'm confident of it. As you move through this weekend, you'll explore many issues that exist in our community. You'll be given the information to understand the what is about our community. My challenge for you is to develop the what could be. Develop your vision for our community as it's the single most important tool you could have. When I started my term as president of UNAVSA 2 years ago, I had no grasp on what I wanted to accomplish personally or as an organization. I didn't have a vision for myself or our community. I remember being really stressed out about this. It got so bad I locked myself in a room one night and just started writing. I wanted to write a description of a community I'd want to go to and I'd want to help create. I'd like to share that with you today. And it's a work in progress, and thanks to some friends here, I was able to refine it a bit this weekend. I start with some tips to myself, so just bear with it. Dear Dan, you can do this. I believe in you. Stay off of Facebook, though, and if you have to get on, don't poke her again. She probably thinks you're just creepy. Just start writing. What is your dream for the community you love? I imagine a community in which all children feel effortlessly Vietnamese American or Vietnamese Canadian, where basic human rights are both cherished and protected, where apathy is something that simply describes how we feel about reality television, where racism and prejudice are just concepts our children and our grandchildren learn about in school, where every person's voice is heard regardless of their age, ethnicity, gender, religion, or sexual orientation, where our liberties and the liberties of our brothers and sisters in Vietnam are defended to the fullest extent, where the community, young, old, and in between, has a shared vision of that community, where we can proudly describe the community as cooperative and not decisive, where anger and resentment about our people's history is no longer the primary driver of action, where each and every Vietnamese person has a stake in our community. I'd like to share one final Zimbardo quote with you. We are all potential heroes waiting for a moment in life to perform a heroic deed. The decision to act heroically, a choice that many of us will be called upon to make at some point in time. By conceiving of heroism as a universal attribute of human nature, not as a rare feature of the few heroic elect, heroism becomes something that seems in the range of possibilities for every person. I've never been so sure of anything in my life. You all have the innate ability. You all have what it takes to be heroes for not only the Vietnamese community, but for humanity itself. But the choice to do so lies within you. Thank you.